going to start right now. Dear fans and viewers in front of the screen, good evening to you all. Welcome to the Chinese Building Association of New South Wales Building and Development Seminar. I am Andy and I am honored to be your host for today's online event. Chinese Building Association of New South Wales was established in January 2020. The association is dedicated to empower members, empower the construction industry, and empower the local community. The association aims to create a professional platform for communication to help members grow their business and to help the industry become better. As the only industry body that serves the building and development industry, we have gained around 300 member businesses, including developers, builders, contractors, suppliers, and other professionals. CBA New South Wales hosts a series of member events, including business events such as Industry Conference, Building and Development Seminar, Career Expo, and the Industry Summit. We also host regular social events such as sport and barbecue parties that creates wonderful opportunities for our members to socially interact with each other. If you would like to become a member of the association, please talk to our assistant on WeChat to find out how to join. Our association established a brand new channel that hosts a collection of events called Building and Development Seminar this February. We have successfully hosted several events each month since. The channel invites leading experts, institutions, and professionals in the industry to share the latest information about 4 major topics: development, construction, real estate, and renovation. The purpose of this seminar is to 1. Help the Chinese community increase knowledge in all 4 areas above. 2. Promoting the service of our members to the Chinese community. And 3. To enhance the association's standing in the Chinese community. We welcome members with in-depth expertise in these topics to come and participate. Unfortunately, due to the COVID restrictions, our association had to cancel all of our offline events in order to comply with the government regulations and to protect our members. We have created a new lockdown special collection of online events to help our members to learn more about the construction industry while staying at home. Today, we will bring you the 5th episode of the lockdown special collection, and we invited speakers from Dixon Rothschild, who I will introduce shortly. Once again, on behalf of the association, I would like to remind all of our members, fans, and viewers to comply with the government restrictions. Stay healthy, stay safe, and together we can get through this difficult period of time as one. We sincerely hope that you will support the association's channel and that it will provide you with practical input and valuable opportunities for further networking and learning. On the top of the screen is the QR code for CBA New South Wales WeChat official account and our WeChat assistant. Please subscribe to our WeChat official account if you haven't. We will also upload recordings of our events on our YouTube channel called Chinese Building Association of NSW. Please search and subscribe to our YouTube channel for all past and future recordings. Next, I would like to thank the companies that contribute to the future of the association. Without your support and trust, the association would not be what it is today, let alone this building and development series. On behalf of all my colleagues in CBA New South Wales, I would like to thank all of our annual sponsors. If you want to support our building and development seminar, you can do so by sponsoring our events. If you would like to sponsor one of our events, please contact our assistant for more information. Next, we come to the most important part. Tonight, we are very lucky to be joined by our special guests from Dixon Rothschild, Mr. Nigel Dixon, Managing Director of Dixon Rothschild, and Ms. Stacey Zhang, Associate Urban Planner and Designer. They will be talking about the new NSW building regulations. Before I introduce our speakers in detail, I would like to briefly introduce Dixon Rothschild. Dixon Rothschild began in 1993 as a collaborative design studio of architects, planners, and urban designers, developing innovative and individualized solutions. Dixon Rothschild worked holistically on each development project from feasibility to design to build, utilizing their deep experience in planning, architecture, advocacy, and urban design. Their portfolio of work include award-winning residential and mixed-use developments throughout New South Wales. Mr. Nigel Dixon is the Managing Director of Dixon Rothschild and has over 30 years experience in the industry. Nigel acted as project architect on the Chiefley Tower from inception to completion. and he was the urban design manager for the Homebush Olympic site. He has served on numerous design panels in the Sydney region and is often requested as a preferred court expert witness in architecture, planning, and urban design in the New South Wales Land and Environment Court. Nigel was a visiting professor at the University of New South Wales, running the urban design studio of the Master of Urban Design and Development. Ms. Stacey Zhang is an associate urban planner and designer working 6 years with Dixon Rothschild. With over 10 years of practical experience in Australia and China, Stacey has been involved on a diverse range of projects across various sectors and scales and built her unique understanding of individual project and its requirements to deliver the development through the approval process in New South Wales. She has guided several large and complex mixed-use, commercial, residential projects and master planning projects in New South Wales. She will be able to answer some of the questions in Chinese later in the Q&A section. Today, they are here to talk about the new New South Wales Building Act and Regulations, which are the Residential Apartment Building Compliance and Enforcement Act 2020 and the Design and Building Practitioner Act 2020 and Regulations. Next, I would like to invite Nigel and Stacey to take over the screen. Just a friendly reminder to our viewers, if you have any questions, please leave them in the chat room, either to all or to me. I will be collecting them, and we will have a Q&A section at the end of the seminar for our speakers to go over the question. Thanks very much for cooperation. Please welcome Mr. Nigel Dixon and Ms. Stacey Zhang.
Good evening. 各位朋友，大家晚上好。Very nice to meet you all and talk about what I understand to be one of the most major changes happening in our industry in the recent 30 to 40 years. We're really talking about two matters tonight. There's two different building acts and the regulations that underpin them. And it's really important that as an association, the magnitude of the change that's coming across the industry is understood. So I'll be referring both to the Residential Apartment Building Compliance and Enforcement Act. This is a very hard-hitting one, which is really directed towards developers and builders and has major powers of stopping work, getting work pulled down and demolished and restored, and enforcing compliance costs. And the Design and Building Practitioners Act, and this, with its regulations, really regulates the activities of designers, the compliance certificates that are issued. It regulates engineers in various forms, and it also regulates the conduct of builders, and that includes subcontractors working under that procedure of getting a building built. These are very hard-hitting regulations and acts, and there are major penalties. They are redisciplining the whole industry, and tonight we'll take you through the change and give you the best briefing you can from people who are working in the industry. Thank you, Stacey. We'll go to the next. Thank you. Sure. The talk tonight will focus on four major areas. I'll try and introduce the two acts and their associated regulations as I can. Then I'll try and brief you on the impact that we see coming across the construction industry from these major changes. And we'll talk about what we are doing as a company. And then we're going to be talking about implications to builders and developers with some suggestions about things that each individual company should take on board as a way forward. Next image. I may need to give a short explanation. 首先我来做一个大概的介绍，关于今天这个 topic 的一个介绍。首先非常感谢大家来参加我们对这个新的 New South Wales Building Act 和 Regulation 的分享。那其实从这个建筑专员 David Chandler 上任以来呢，他为我们建筑行业有很多大刀阔斧的改革。政府呢也有一系列新政策的颁布，包括刚才Nigel介绍的，从去年6月份开始实施的 Design and Building Practitioner Act， 以及这后面会要提到的一系列的其他的改革，包括 Six Reform Pillars， 然后到今年7月1号正式实施的 Regulation and Design and Building Act。这一系列的改革和政策的完善，其实都是为了恢复公众对建筑行业，尤其是住宅建筑的信心，以及恢复对建筑业的公信力。
这一些的 regulation 其实也非常新，自正式实施以来到今天，其实也就刚刚3个月。我相信我们这个行业的很多人呢，都想要全面的了解对这个行业以及从业者的影响，所以我们今天就是从建筑师的角度来分享一下。那可以看到，就是刚才 Nigel 做的这个 introduction， 今天的讲座会由 Nigel 作为主讲人，当然是以英文的形式。不过相信这些内容大家其实是能够基本了解的，基本理解的。所以呢，我只在每个章节结束的时候用中文来总结一下。Now move on to the formal presentation.
Thank you, Stacey. Tonight's presentation, we're also joined by Fergus Cumming, the technical director of our company, who's assisted in the preparation of this PowerPoint. An important place to start is where the media talks, and the media has made a lot of noise about non-conformance and prohibition orders that have been ordered under the Residential Apartment Building Act. Top Place were issued a prohibition order just recently, and they've settled the matter so that they're bound to a responsibility to overview and manage the building over a 10-year period, as I understand it. The magnitude of the disasters, and I will use the term advisedly disasters because they are very unpleasant for everyone involved, is that they have created a wave of publicity in the industry that's undermined the good work that many of the members of this industry have done right across New South Wales. There's been a lot of good buildings built, a lot of people work very hard, but unfortunately a couple of instances have created some really bad news in the press, and this unfortunately was one of them. The next image, if I can move to that, Stacey, will be other projects that you'll recognise. The Opal Tower apartment, structural issues that cause the plaster fretting and other more disturbing incidences within that building, and the Mascot Tower, issues with its foundations and so forth. All of these 3 instances in New South Wales within a short period of time have really caused the government to act with severity to actually regulate the industry. Before, you might say it was an informally regulated industry, where it was self-enforced in a sense by the participants within the industry, but now the government has laid down a very heavy hand on the issues. I'll move to the next image. The magnitude of the problem is actually quite widespread. While we talk about 3 particular issues, the Building Commissioner's Office have done a survey across many of these recently built strata apartments in New South Wales, and obviously these strata apartments involve many, many people. There were 357 responses to that survey. On a median, there were 54 apartments in each building, and 34 of those strata plans reported major defects. The graphic in front of you showing an orange will show that 37% had structural issues or reporting structural. 78% were reporting waterproofing issues, and 56% reporting fire safety system issues, and 37% building enclosure. So while we've had some major publicity within the media, there is a big burden coming across the stratas, and in a sense to protect the consumers, the government has developed these new acts which are very hard-hitting and targeting defects and construction issues broadly across the industry. So we'll move and we'll now go into a discussion about what these acts require. Basically, the 2 bits of legislation apply to residential class 2 buildings, but there is a clear intent that all building work eventually will be covered by very similar procedures. The Residential Apartment Building Act, it's a Compliance and Enforcement Act 2020, is probably one of the hardest bits of legislation I've ever seen. It allows the building commissioner, that's David Chandler with it wearing the outfit there, he has the ability to send in his authorised officers. He has the ability to issue search warrants. He has the ability to seize materials, and he has the ability to issue stop work notices and compliance notices. He can do that at any time. The Act is retrospective, meaning it goes back 10 years. So it covers buildings built through to obviously 2011. The powers for The building commissioner, when reports are made on strata defects, to act on them and get them investigated is very hard hitting. The second act that we know from design and building end of things affects the way we as designers, that is architects, building designers, and building practitioners, and the associated engineers, structural, civil, mechanical, electrical, and fire principally behave and certify designs. And particularly the builder has a charged responsibility for ensuring that the regulated design is uploaded onto the portal. And I'll go discuss that in greater detail, but the builder has, by no question, the largest burden in the process. Next image, thank you. This Class 2 buildings may not be known to everyone unless you're reading the BCA regularly. It's important it's understood that it's a multi-unit residential apartment building where people live above and below each other. It could be a mixed-use building that contains Class 2 in part, but also have commercial office spaces, shops and residents in the same building. And it can be particular low-rise attached dwellings. So these acts apply to all of those building types. In the blue dashed outline is the principal ones we're dealing with here, where we've got two class dwellings above each other. They have common wall, they share common floors and so forth. So that's the nature of the building group that is covered from the 1st of July under the new legislation. Next image. Now, the key takeouts I want everyone here to be aware of is that there is an enforcement of a duty of care that's recognised under law, and there's an inescapable duty in a sense, and a clarity of responsibility by all participants in the construction industry. Developers are embraced in this problem, builders, designers, and engineers, and specialist engineers and other groups that are brought on. There are ways of doing things where risk can be passed from one group to the other is gone. Everyone is charged with the duty of care. The building commissioner has enormous power to ensure compliance with BCA, the NCC, retrospectively, and his authorised officers, as I said, can enter sites with search warrants, issue stop work orders, issue orders to demolish and or rectify, and then can order compliance costs upon the individuals concerned with the work. Design practitioners, such as us architects, but also professional engineers, specialist practitioners, building practitioners must all be qualified and registered. The qualification process isn't just an appropriate degree covered under your regulation, in the regulations in your profession, but also involves police checks and examinations under the Department of Fair Trading requirements. So the matter of getting registered is a key necessity for all designers involved within the industry. Also, building practitioners. Builders need to also to be registered and qualify as such. The next dot point, design practitioners and professional engineers must prepare and certify designs to comply with the BCA, NCC, and other relevant building standards. It's not a matter of just having completed a CC and passed on the risk, as it were, to the PCA or your performance engineer advisors. An individual practitioner must certify the designs. If you're a structural or civil engineer, those designs must be certified. So it necessitates really, in essence, the completion of the design to warrant that certification to a much higher level than we've seen previously. The last dot point, building practitioners, in other words, builders, they must follow the regulated design. If they are going to have variations, and obviously we all know variations occur through scope changes and so forth, they need to be properly certified by the design practitioners, the professional engineers, and then individual compliance declarations issued for those variation works. So everything is tracked and comprehensively brought into a complete registered statement. Importantly, builders will need to maintain a register of all their contractors involved in the project. If one is a subcontractor, subcontractors will be bound by the same requirement. It doesn't matter if you're a head building contractor or a subcontractor or working in a subcontracting business, your obligation to be aware of your compliance to the regulated design is paramount, and there's no exception to any of that. Thank you, Stacey. Next slide. So what we're seeing is these acts are really just the tip of the iceberg about change that the New South Wales government wants to come across in the building industry. It views basically our industry as being a bit of a cottage industry, and we're not disciplining ourselves well enough. They're trying to enforce a better regulatory environment for the legislation pertaining to the act of being a builder, preparing designs, and it's all geared around customer focus. They want people who buy apartments and buy Class 2 buildings to be protected. They want building rating systems and insurers and so forth to have a better understanding of the participants and the skills within the industry. The individual building skills, they want to develop building skills across the industry. They're looking at systematization and cost savings where possible. Methods of procuring buildings are going to be under review, and that will come to clear statements of engagement, contracts, and outputs. These will come in due course. There's a lot of awareness about building a digital future and trying to move stronger into a BMI platform arrangement. At the moment, the industry is still in its infancy on these skills, but the government is very keen to develop more intelligent building solutions through BMI type solutions. Importantly, they're also wanting to get quality research. They're aware of gaps and studies in the industry over our various standards and compliance documents, and so they'll be trying to build up research databases to backline the process. So that's the government's big ticket approach, but we're just at the tip of the iceberg with these new acts and regulations. Thanks, Stacey.
So I will do a summary. 可以看到，就是目前 Class 2 building 建筑住宅类的建筑还是有一些 defects 出现的，所以呢，目前的改革以及法案和法规还是只适用于 Class 2 建筑以及混合功能建筑里的 Class 2 部分，也就是这个混合功能里的住宅部分。但是政府的相关部门呢，正在准备将法规扩展到所有的建筑类别。我们一直在说的6大改革支柱，其实它的核心是想要建立一个新的系统，在这个系统下面会对从业人员，包括建筑商、开发商、工程师、设计师和认证机构，就是certifier， 根据一系列的指标进行评级和评分，包括他们的安全记录、财务信誉等等。那些得分低的从业者将会标记在数据库中，那之后他们的项目将有可能会受到建筑专员的严格审查。同时，政府也在研究推行行业的信息透明化，比如说会在图纸上引入2维码来追溯图纸信息，这些都在研究和推行的过程中。新的 regulation 和 act 对建筑行业的所有从业者，包括开发商、建造商、设计师、工程师，开始强制执行他们的谨慎任务和明确责任，也就是 duty of care。建筑专员有权以追溯的方式确保从业者遵循 BCA、NCC 等一系列建筑规范和这个规范的要求。那授权的建筑专员可以使用可以使用搜索令进入到施工现场发出停工令、拆除令或者整改令，甚至可以下令其支付合规的费用。新的 regulation 和 act 有一项非常重要的变革，就是要求设计从业人员、专业工程师、专业从业人员、建筑从业人员必须具备资格并完成注册。当然，目前也还仅是局限于 Class 2 建筑或者是 Class 2 建筑的部分。设计从业人员和专业工程师呢，必须准备并且证明其设计是符合 BCA 和 NCC 相关规定的，就是 regulated design。另外一项新的改动呢，是针对于建筑从业者的，也就是 builder， 他的施工必须遵循规范的设计。在整个施工过程中，如果提出变革， 那么也需要提供建筑合规声明，并注册在登记册里。Move to the next section.
Thank you. In the second section, I want to overview what it's going to do to the construction industry. The first thing is that we're all bound by a statutory duty of care, and a duty of care under law is a tested process where one can be shown to be negligent if we're not following appropriate practice. So topic number one is about business systems. It's about your QA documents. It's about accurate record keeping to ensure that you have a position that's covered at all times and you are following the appropriate acts, setting standards, the BCA and the NCC. Item two is that everyone must be registered. There are systems for that now, but all design practitioners must be registered as soon as possible and certainly encouraged. There is a tier of design practitioners called a principal design practitioner. It's probably more suited to more major complicated projects than class 2 buildings, but that is someone who will take a responsibility for overall certifying the overall completion of the regulated design, including all disciplines and trades. All professional engineers need to look at the regulations and be aware of their need to be appropriately registered and meet the requirements of the regulations, including professional training, sitting the examinations, and that is clear and straightforward. Those who are specialist practitioners, and the regulations even cover lifts and to some degree geotech, those groups need to be aware of their obligations under the Act. So even if you're a peripheral provider in the construction industry, you need to look at the acts and regulations and ensure that you're aware of your responsibilities. Particularly the building practitioners, those builders, the subcontractors and various participants in the building chain need to be looking very carefully at their requirements for registration. Everyone must be registered as soon as possible. The third strand to this liaison is about compliance declarations. The design team and the engineers are responsible for issuing design compliance declarations. In simple terms, we've designed buildings, but we now need to issue, or not just obtain a CC, we need to actually ourselves certify those designs that they meet all of those requirements. If your company is well practiced and is understanding that the quality of work is good, then you need to be aware that those design compliance declarations will require very rigorous internal review in your company. It may include peer review and sign-offs by others within the organisation. The builder has a major responsibility for design compliance declarations, and that's with respect to the regulated design. You'll hear the term regulated design a lot. That is the design that the builder is to build, or if he's to vary that design, then that variation needs to be properly certified and signed off by the design compliance with the design compliance certification, and that the set of documents is upgraded and the builder then can proceed with those variation works. Everyone will be obviously needing to review their insurance requirements, designers, engineers, as well as the building practitioners. We're certainly within our organisation talking to our insurers, but the insurance industry as a whole is still coming to grips with the enormity of these new acts and regulations of what it does in terms of the responsibilities of all participants within the industry. Go to the next image, Stacey. So we all have a broad understanding of how projects in the Class 2 space work. The developers in the light blue line and the design practitioners and the associated engineers are usually charged with getting a CC done, and we tend to think about it being somewhere around a 30% set of documents that meets the development consent conditions. And then we might move forward in our industry generally towards a 70% tender set. And then at that point, the developers tend to move over and take more of a back seat. The design practitioners are generally not involved. The builders go forward with a more D&C approach to 100% completion with the subcontractors. Now that broad flow of activities, and obviously that's a very general indication of the way it often works, all of that has now been changed. The developers are intrinsically linked to the project and responsible for the project at all times. The builders are charged with obtaining the certification of the regulated design. They're the ones who have to, in essence, warrant that the building they build meets the regulated design in all aspects. The design practitioners, including the engineers and the associated specialists, are not just responsible for the front-end activity on the project, but they have a duty to see the project right through, and their design is the one that has to be built in essence. Obviously, the builder and the subcontractors are charged with getting the building built, but they also take on a risk of having to upload the certifications at the appropriate time. And I'll speak more about the OC phase of the work a little later on. Thank you, Stacey. So I've spoken about the groups and their responsibilities. I won't take too much time on that, but you can see really quickly if you read across the rows here, the design practitioners, they prepare the regulated design for a building element. They prepare the design and then they formally issue a design compliance declaration. On large, very complicated projects, principal design practitioners will be involved. They take a different level of risk in offering a design compliance declaration, and theirs is called a principal design compliance declaration. The builders, the building practitioners, they carry out the work, and they will be the principal contractors, but obviously there will be a whole lot of other participants within the building exercises. It's a very big food chain of suppliers and organised subcontractors. The builder, in essence, takes on responsibility for attaining the regulated design. It's prepared by the design practitioner, so they have to ensure that they've got the right people preparing the right documents. They have to check that the design compliance declaration has been issued at the appropriate time, or the principal compliance declaration has been issued. But that's a very big responsibility. The professional engineers have to carry out their prescribed activity, supporting the design practitioner, working with the building practitioner, and they also are issuing compliance declarations for their work in civil engineering, structural engineering, fire safety, hydraulic and electrical in the main. Lifts are also bound into that process. Stacey, we'll go to the next image.
可以看出来呢，这一系列的法案和法规的引入，对我们建筑行业有很大的改变。强调了专业人员的注册和合规声明。这一系列的改变，对我们常见的 D&C 形式的合同也有一定的转变。我们常见的操作形式或者流程呢，是开发商直接 engage 设计团队，包括建筑师、结构工程师等等，去准备 CC 图纸和 tender 图纸。通常我们说的 tender 是总体程度完成的70%，有些会更高，有些会更低，取决于项目的复杂程度。但常见的是 tender 完成 ，builder 确定下来以后，就会由 builder 对接设计团队，甚至是 builder 会用自己的 subcontract 来完成剩下部分的施工图纸。新的 regulation 的引进，并不是说之前的这种 D&C contract 就不能再适用了，它其实是要求有资质的设计团队从头到尾的参与整个项目，和 builder 一起把控项目的质量。新的法规的引入了4类从业人员的注册，包括设计从业者、首席设计从业者、建筑从业者、专业工程师，当然这是大类，每一项下面还有细分的类别。建筑师和建筑商，也就是 builder 还增加了一项新的义务，就是在申报和提交设计时，需要提交设计合规声明以及建筑合规声明。
Thank you, Stacey. In the third part of this talk, I'll talk about what our company is doing, but I'm doing this deliberately to throw out some understanding of how all companies have to act and take steps, and they must do it immediately. Our duty of care process is obviously exists today through our architectural registration process through the Board of Architects. While that's been useful, really in essence, the new design practitioner registration to a large part now supersedes that previous registration, but we have obligations under the Architects Act, but increasingly we now have obligations as registered design practitioners. Fergus Cumming, who I introduced at the beginning of our talk tonight, is our company's registered design practitioner. Our goal is to get all our major architects, our lead architects, as registered design practitioners and get them through the various police checks and examinations. We know we have a responsibility to declare regulated design, so we're looking very carefully at how we train our staff. Staff training is one of the most important things we find in our industry, is the understanding of the BCA and the NCC has to be elevated and become much more rigorous. The previous days of trying to rest on the PCA and subcontractor understanding of construction is gone. The obligation on building design is they must know those regulations thoroughly. We are also actively discussing these matters with our insurers, although we don't have any pressing matters or legitimate concerns. We think the burden of insurance costs in the industry will expand greatly with the heightened level of risk that all of us have as builders, architects, engineers. There will be heightened risk. Specifically also, we are looking at our legal advice. We work with a couple of legal providers to make sure we understand our obligations under the Act and regulations, and we have been consulting with them regularly. A lot of lawyers are professing to understand these things, but I think it's very important that you work with your principal legal advisors and make sure that you and your team has a thorough understanding of the Act and regulations and your responsibilities under it. We've extended our legal review to all current contracts that we have that involve construction, and we're obviously going through that systematically and looking at our ability to support developer builder clients in this new environment. Internally, we're also enhancing our record keeping systems and making sure that we have full documentation of our work at all stages of the project, so that records aren't lost, files are transferred appropriately with appropriate transmittals, and documentation of the process is extremely rigorous. Stacey, we'll move to the next image. Importantly, I'd like to talk to you about a couple of cases that we have right now. We're involved in the construction of a building. It's broadly about 25 million in construction. It's 42 apartments. They're very large apartments. It's a multi-residential class 2 building. The DA was approved in 2019 and the builder was selected in 2020. So obviously a lot of the construction certificate documents, and we obtained the CC, was done prior to the 1st of July. However, with the requirements for the regulated design to be prepared, we can't rely on a CC set of documents as being sufficiently rigorous. And so in this case, we're working with our building team to prepare additional details in relation to waterproofing details, wet area documentation, building compartment plans with details showing the alignments of various materials in relation to those compartment designations. We're looking at enhanced level of structural elements documentation, and we're looking at the unspoken interface with landscape so that you access building thresholds and similar items are addressed rigorously. So with these documents on this building, even though we got a CC before the 1st of July, we are now in charge with our team to complete and lodge a regulated design under the new Act. And we'll be required to certify that. So we ourselves as professionals need to be comfortable that we have met those requirements. The second case study is a different one. We've been approached by some long-standing clients, but they are preparing interior fit-outs of new medical facilities. The design was prepared by non-registered designers, let's call them interior designers, before the 1st of July. Now we've been approached to review and, where necessary, amend the design for lodgement with a certificate of design compliance. And this is where we see a major issue, that a lot of design work in the industry, particularly interior fit-out work, has not been done with heightened levels of rigor. And we can see that now there is a requirement for a certificate of design compliance to be done on these interior type works. We're going to be working with our client to conduct site visits during construction, and we're going to be obviously working with the contractor to ensure that they're able to issue an appropriate building compliance declaration. So at all scales of the industry, we're seeing change. It will be on the big projects, but it'll be on small. The processes are relatively similar, but the enhanced level of supervision and review is extremely compelling. Everything that we were doing before will be changed.
有些朋友可能有所了解公寓类的项目是我们 Dixon Rothschild 的一个主要的业务，所以基于新的法案和法规的要求我们也在第一时间就注册了 Design Practitioner， 也就是设计从业者，所以我们具备提供设计合规声明的资质。我们公司内部呢也在持续的加强培训 BCA、NCC 等规范。因为这个法规和法案其实非常的新，我们也在寻求法律建议，进一步了解我们在该法案下的义务。同时，我们也在寻求律师对我们当前合同的法律审查，包括在施工期间所应该承担的任务，以便我们能够在这个新的环境下更好的支持开发商和建造商的工作。当然，我们也在审查我们的记录保存系统。刚才奈周也讲到了新的这个 Act， 不光是针于大的项目，它其实对小的项目也是在逐渐推广开来的，也是在加强控制的。
Thank you, Stacey. So I will just cover shortly in a few images the building practitioners requirements. And those of you on the building end of things will need to really follow this very carefully. Obviously, the first thing is that the builder is charged with making sure the correct registered design practitioners have prepared regulated designs. It's incumbent on everyone now to ensure that the documents, the plans, the drawings, the specifications they have in front of them are prepared by appropriately qualified people who are registered. And this is an immediate consideration of everyone in the building industry. There are a lot of people out there who are not yet registered or have prepared documents prior to the 1st of July, in which there are processes by which compliance statements need to be obtained. The builder will obviously be charged with issuing building compliance declarations and other documents at the completion of the project. That's a small but very significant task. If there's a registered principal design practitioner, then a principal compliance declaration is required. Now that's a small difference of saying if the job is a very big and complicated job and a principal design practitioner is on board, then the builder will issue a slightly different certificate. At the next stage is that at completion, all compliance declarations need to be lodged through the New South Wales planning portal. So the compliance declarations from engineers and architects need to be placed on the planning portal. This is an important public procedure that all regulated designs can be seen in the public realm, obviously by the government and its associated people within the Building Commissioner's office. We'll go to the next stage. So that's stage one. During construction, the biggest activity we all face is that changes occur. And maybe for a whole lot of reasons. Moving bathrooms around, changing door positions. These variations will need to be tracked. They will need to be certified by the design practitioners, and they will become absorbed in due course into the regulated design. This is a very important way that we can't just have the builder commence the work, but at all stages the regulated design is being changed and modified as the process go on. And that must be properly uploaded and put on the portal for examination. Go to the next image. And this image is a little bit complicated, but I'll take you through it. And importantly, it brings everyone together. The developer is charged with responsibility. The design team is charged with responsibility. The builder is charged with responsibility. And obviously we have the building commissioner coming into the picture. On the left-hand side, the developer must notify the registered building practitioner of the intention to apply for OC. In simple words, the developer has to work with the builder to apply for an OC. It's the builder who actually applies for the OC. The builder will issue a compliance declaration called a BCD, and that will form his major part of the work. That's a very big task. Before the OC is issued, the developer is to provide the building compliance declaration to the PCA and notify the building practitioner, it's the builder, that the application has been submitted. So here we see in the third stage there, the developer is interweaving with the builder and the PCA to notify that an application has been submitted. The documentation has to be issued and uploaded on the portal. And this is where David Chandler and his authorised representatives can attend the site. If you ever get a chance, go have a look at the Department of Fair Trading website for actions that the Residential Apartment Building Act is taking on board for stop work orders and prohibitions. It's quite scary. However, this is where the building commissioner can come onto a site and does enter a site. And anecdotally, I'm hearing they're not there just for a day or two. Some sites they're there for up to 5 days. After the OC has been obtained and through that ordeal, 90 days after that, the building practitioner, in other words, the builder, must lodge all regulated designs and other documents through the New South Wales portal. This is a very important handover, and it's there for the protection of stratas, in essence, that the strata has a set of rigorous documents that it can rely on, being the building that's been built and obtained an OC for. If you have time, understand that in the future, under the regulations, even the title blocks we put on drawings have to be in a specific way mandated by the regulations, and we'll be hearing more about that. We hear rumours that they intend to place QR codes on all drawings so that they can be tracked and on the portal. We'll see how that goes. It's more complicated than it sounds like, but inevitably there's going to be a lot of tracking documents. And this is where one can see the full ability to track all documents, designs, and then obtain the certifications of those works are all going to be rigorously reviewed through this process. So it's a very new world, and it's very comprehensive. So I encourage all members of the association to become aware of it, and look at where it sits with their own companies and their own interests. If I go to the next image. So a way to recap this in simple terms for everyone who's listening will be, please, in step one, start to understand your duty of care for your specific area of your industry, whether you're developers, whether you're builders, subcontractors, designers, or engineers. Understand your requirements of duty of care. Make sure you understand your requirements to be registered. Everyone needs to be registered. It's a bit like vaccination. You have to be vaccinated, you have to be registered. Everyone needs to be registered. You need to understand your responsibility for issuing compliance declarations. You need to understand when they can be done and when you may be unwilling to do it. Some groups will not be able to issue compliance declarations. It's possible that they'll come to other groups to try and get those compliance declarations issued. Be aware of the risks of how one signs off on a set of documents. You're going to be tracked, and there will be traceability for everything that's been done. Please start talking to your insurers about your compulsory insurance requirements. It's mandated under the Act. It will be very important. I also suggest, if you're involved in any construction activity at the moment, please review your contracts and obligations with your legal advisors, and particularly look at your record keeping in relation to those matters. I know this sounds very difficult to deal with. Some of you will find this easy to deal with, but others will find it very hard. The University of Western Sydney recently did a survey of all the participants in the construction industry, and their findings are available on the website of the Department of Fair Trading, but generally they recognise the industry is generally at its infancy on record keeping and bringing industrial standards, particularly on movement of drawings and data on projects. So there's a lot of work to be done, and the curve has to start now, because we can't talk about these acts starting in a year or two. There's no transition period. If you're working on Class 2 buildings, then you must follow these things and be aware of your obligations. Unfortunately, and this is very gloomy stuff, and I'm sorry I have to tell you it, you can receive a notice to show cause to explain any offences that are tracked. So when David Chandler and his officers come on building sites, you can be given notices to explain. And obviously that may involve legal proceedings. You may be taken to local court or the Land Environment Court. We've seen the various things in the media on some of the prohibition matters and how they can be resolved. There can be penalties of up to 220,000 for body corporates and 110,000 for individuals. And so your responsibility as individuals is important to understand. And obviously there can be disqualification from registration. So this is a very tough time about the building industry. I've never seen anything like it in my time. One might have to go back to the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act of 1979 for such a rigorous change, but this is changing an industry that's been working in a certain sort of way into a new form of discipline. Thank you for your time tonight. I'll stay on, and Stacey will just finish off this section.
那由以上可以看出呢，新的法案和法规对开发商和建筑商在开发过程中，包括设计阶段，也就是动工之前、施工阶段、竣工阶段所需要承担的义务都是有所增加的。其中每一次的变更，包括设计的变更和变更所需要的合规声明，均需要由建筑商，就是 builder 提交至规划门户网站。所以建筑商需要更谨慎地审视自己在项目中的责任，以及为了获取建筑合规声明所承担的工作。其中像递交变更和合规证明就是一项新的工作。建筑商还需要在项目过程中谨慎的系统的保存文件，也就是说 builder 不再像以前一样只要能够完成施工拿到 OC 就可以了。在新的 regulation 下 builder 需要更明确 duty of care。当然如果不合规的情况出现了，惩罚力度也会有所增加。那基于时间原因，以上就是今天分享的主要内容。I will hand it to Andy for the
Thank you very much, Stacey and Nigel. So we are running out a little bit, like we are running over time a little bit. Is it okay if we extend the length for 10 more minutes for the questions?
That's fine. Thank you.
Okay. So next for the Q&A section, I will also welcome the technical director for Dyson Rothschild, and also his registered design practitioner, Mr. Fergus Cumming. Would you like to say hi to everyone?
Hi, thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, great. Okay, so next we move on to the questions. The first question is, does the registered building practitioner for the project need to be the nominated supervisor for the company?
Technically, no. The company needs to have the company forms a body corporate, of which the body corporate has, that body corporate being an organisation, has a nominated or building contractor, building consultant.
Yeah, great. Thanks very much, Fergus. And then next question is, this viewer applied for the builder's practitioner license. He or she would like to know how long will it usually take for the approval process?
For the building
practitioner
I
license.
can't answer. The process of certification for a builder is not one I've been through. The architecture process was, there were some education requirements and there were some courses that I had to meet, some checks, there was some experience validation. So the whole process took about a week and a half, but you already had to have the qualifications. The architecture process is a little bit more lenient than the engineering, because the engineering required more stringent re-education, for want of a better term, and the building consultancy I'm not familiar with entirely.
Okay, great. Thanks very much. And next question is, for those who need to be to get registered, what is the normal procedure?
Again, I can only speak of the architectural process. So the normal procedure would have been that you had the relevant qualification. You then attended the courses that were prescribed by the Office of the Building Commissioner. You then submitted an application with the certificates that you received of that training, and all the other requirements in terms of references for your experience and the police checks. Basically, the whole process of the registration is to make a person accountable, not just an organization.
Great, thanks very much.
这个我补充一下，其实以上的这些 question 就这个如何去注册，包括什么样的人具备注册的资格，在 New South Wales Fair Trading 网站上有非常详细的介绍，每一步都有这个介绍，每个类别都有介绍。那每一个类别包括建筑师、工程师，他所要求的 qualification 和相关的行业的时间、从业经验、从业时间都是不一样的，所以建议每一个类别的从业人员能够更详细的去访问那个网站来查看自己这个行业所需要的要求。
Thanks very much, Fergus and Stacey. And next question is, under the DBP Act, if the builder goes bankrupt, how can you hold the builder responsible for the defects? This is the situation where this viewer is having with their apartment, whose builder and developer both went bankrupt, and there's no way they can get back to fix the defects for their building. So they would like to know, under the DBP Act, is there any changes or not?
Absolutely. So at the moment, I would understand that the person who's asked the question is struggling with the Western Australian precedent, which is separating the strata body from the developer who was an integral part of the process, and therefore the strata which was not in existence during the process of the project is no longer able to make a claim. So what this act is actually trying to do is close that loophole by actually registering people that are associated. So the projects that have been run underneath the post July 1st, there will be a person who is ultimately responsible for the project or the design for forever, really. So that there's a higher, in terms of the developer and the design practitioner, the insurance becomes a very important thing for you, because you want that protection for things that may happen, and they may not be as a result of your own work, but that's the way the law works in New South Wales. That sometimes all parties are wrapped up in legal cases, even though your participation in the issue may be relatively minor or non-existent.
And if I could add in here in relation to the question asked, obviously the Residential Apartment Building Act is a retrospective act, and that's in order to address buildings that have been completed recently in New South Wales in which defects are arising. The Building Commissioner is very aware of how often builders will close down a company or claim bankruptcy to avoid a responsibility. The Act places particular responsibilities on individuals, and I would encourage the viewer here to research the matter more, but the Act is a very powerful document that doesn't seek refuge in bankruptcy. Those involved in a process where major fault has occurred have personal responsibilities under that Act, as I understand it. So there is good news in this mechanism for these failed projects that have occurred in the last 10 years. So I encourage the viewer to get in touch with their legal team and look at the Residential Apartment Building Act. There is a recourse power available.
Thank you very much, Fergus and Nigel. The next question is, the viewers want to know more about the Class 2 buildings. Our dual occupancy with common wall Class 2 building. And another viewer have a question related to existing swimming pool renovation, which will fix the waterproofing, retiring, and remaking of the portions wall. Would these fall into Class 2 new legislation requirements? These are the, they want to know more about the Class 2.
I can speak to the Class 2. So in essence, in simplest terms, a house is Class 1. Townhouses that are lined up side by side are Class 1. You only start getting Class 2 when you've got another class of buildings, such as a common area or a car park, which would then trigger another Class 2. That the Class 1 element would then become Class 2. You also get a Class 2 classification when you have sole occupancy units on top of each other.
Yeah. So in this viewer's case, there's only like a swimming pool renovation, but it's a part of the 350 plus apartment facility. Does it classify as Class 2?
Absolutely. You've got multi-res. So multi-res as the difference between multi-res and residential flat buildings. Residential flat buildings are taller.
Yeah.
Once you have multiple classes, you have a Class 2 building and multiple sole occupancy units. So you are automatically at 350 units and a common swimming pool, Class 2.
No problem. And this new question just come in. They ask about if duplex belong to Class 2.
Again, it's only if there is another class underneath it or another sole occupancy unit.
Yeah, great. Okay, thanks very much. And next question is, where can we find more information for the formal information from the government?
Andy, the simple way is the Department of Fair Trading website has links to the acts and regulations. They obviously set out those in a government sort of way, but most leading law firms in Sydney are offering advice to practitioners, and we clearly, as a design practice, as architects and planners and urban designers, would be available for any particular inquiry. So Stacey has put our email contact details on the screen. We appreciate there'll be many people out there, but we are ready to take on board answering many inquiries as they may come up. Stacey will just put the contact details, the email details on there. Stacey can be contacted by WeChat as well.
Okay, thank you very much, Nigel. So we are already running over time. So if anyone who have other questions, we encourage you to get in contact with them. And so you can get more thorough answers for your questions. Thank you very much, Nigel, Fergus, and Stacey, for sharing such great content with us. And thank you to all our viewers to join this new installment of Building and Development Seminar. If you would like to be more involved in our events, please subscribe to our WeChat official account. Don't forget, all of the recording for our event will be on our YouTube channel. Search Chinese Building Association of NSW and subscribe. You can find all of our past recordings there. Thank you very much for supporting the Building and Development Seminar. And that concludes our program for today. See you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.